Hyrule has some of the tastiest recipes I've ever seen in a game, one of my favorites being this fruitcake, which looks more like a fancy birthday cake to me than a traditional fruitcake. We've also got delicious omelets of several varieties, fried rices, curry dishes, prime cheesy meatballs, look at that thing, and pizza, but somehow not a single taco in sight. Today I'll be fixing that by making these Hateno Village tacos. And what do we need to make delicious tacos? Corn, of course. And what else is oddly missing from Hyrule's agricultural bounty? That's right, corn. So I'm making some of those today too. While I get my corn template started, let's talk about where corn could reasonably grow in Hyrule. According to Google, corn grows best in warm, sunny weather, well-distributed, intermittent, moderate rains or irrigation, and 130 or more frost-free days. In Hyrule, there are only a few regions that would meet that criteria. The Hateno region, the Faerun region, and the Akkala region. The most ideal of these places is the Hateno region, with its rolling hills, temperate climate, and already fully established farmland. We also already see crops like pumpkins and tomatoes in the Hateno region, which require similar growing conditions as corn. So our corn today will officially be named Hateno corn. These corns are modeled, by the way, after these Harvest Moon corns, since they were a commission for my great friend and toy photographer, Steph. She has a wonderful YouTube channel, which is essentially a podcast where she interviews toy photographers and asks them about their inspirations and process. I highly recommend watching it. It's super chill and interesting. After trimming my corn template to be able to fit into a mold easily, I coat it in some translucent clay to make the indents between the corn kernels a little less prominent. For my corn mold, I use some silicone, which is a silicone-based mold putty. And I use my daughter's patented punch the mold technique, in the hopes of it producing a nice clean mold, since this is a thicker template than I usually use. After letting the mold set for about 20 minutes, I add my corn-colored clay to it, and put it in the freezer for a bit so I can cleanly remove it from the mold without it turning into corn goop. While our corn chills out, I get started on our corn husk by rolling out a thin sheet of green cosclay. After also chilling the corn husk and texturing it a bit, I realize I can't remove it from the foil. So I decide to use some super sculpey clay for this instead of cosclay. And I roll it out on a sheet of paper rather than foil, and that worked so much better. I also barely had any trouble removing it from the paper, which was amazing. After baking 2 corn halves from my mold, I get ready to glue them together. That back one came out a little flat, so we'll use the prettier one as the front corn. Most of the back half will be covered by the husk, so it doesn't matter too much how it looks. While I work on my corn husk, let's talk about what actual Hyrule ingredients a Hylian taco would be composed of. Since the only grain options we have in Hyrule are Tabantha wheat and Hylian rice, the obvious choice for the tortilla would be Tabantha wheat. For the meat filling, we have so many delicious options, from your standard bird thighs and drumsticks to a variety of fishes, and for the fanciest tacos, we could use some prime or gourmet meat. For the seasoning, I'd imagine some spicy peppers or Goron spice would be really good, and for the milder seasoning option, we could just use some Hylian tomatoes. Ooh, a monster taco variant would be really cool too, like these monster meals you can already make in the game. It would be called the Gloom Bringer Supreme, and it would have a black shell and some super spicy purple sauce oozing out of it. We could even have a Korok taco, which would obviously be the vegan option. It would have a crunchy green tortilla, tomatoes, and some Hyrule herbs sprinkled on top. Alright, where were we? Oh yeah, taco ingredient prep. I start with some perfectly ripened Hylian tomato slices, cut and diced from my freezer-fresh tomato cane. After baking my diced tomatoes, I eagerly and prematurely apply some Sculpey gloss to them, which I mix together with some red chalk pastel to make them a bit more vibrant. For my lettuce, I start with 3 different shades of green Sculpey clay, and arrange them from lightest green in the middle to darkest green on the outer edges. Where would lettuce grow in Hyrule? I know the Hateno region is the most logical place for it to grow, since it has farmland and gardens already, but if we wanted to get some wild lettuce, it would probably come from Hyrule Ridge, or West Necluda, since these are temperate and lush regions where we can find other edible plants, like Hyrule herbs and swift carrots. So long story short, what I'm trying to say is, we're making West Necluda lettuce here. To pinch my clay into a lettucey shape, I used a silicone mold sheet that I randomly smashed with different sculpting tools. After doing that over and over again with tinier pieces of lettuce clay, I've got some nice taco topping candidates ready for baking. Using some of the leftover cheese from my Hylian pizza video, I roll it out to my favorite cheese thickness, ultra thin, and then cut it into narrow strips before popping it in the freezer. After a few minutes, I remove my cheese from the freezer and work on pulling the cheese strings apart, and giving them some more organic wavy shapes before baking them. After carefully trimming my strips of cheese, we've got a nice teensy serving of shredded Hateno cheese for our tacos. For our onion topping, I roll out a sheet of translucent Sculpey clay and use my small circle cutter to get the onion slice shape started. After baking our onion sheet and removing the excess clay, we have what looks like really weird nail trimmings. I carefully sort through and cut the remaining pieces to get some nice onion slice candidates, which I end up deciding I don't like the look of, so I just dice them all instead. For the meat of our taco, which will be poultry, I texture a piece of cream-colored clay with a tiny piece of foil, and brush it with some tan and orange-brown chalk pastels. After chilling my chicken log in the freezer for a few minutes, I cut it up into nice little slices, and texture them with my X-Acto knife so that they look like sliced cooked chicken breast. Before we get started on our tortillas, it's time for a very special snack break. Since today marks the 1-year anniversary of my YouTube channel, and it's my mom's birthday, I'll be celebrating with this delicious birthday cupcake. My mom was my first big supporter of my art endeavors as a kid, whether it was drawing my favorite video game characters or making my first few clay minis. She's always been there to cheer me on. I can't thank you enough, Mommy. I love you so much and hope you have a wonderful birthday. For our tortilla mold, I start off with a thin sheet of Sculpey clay that I texture with a ball of foil, my silicone pointy tool, and my tiny ballpoint tool to imitate the teensy air bubbles tortillas sometimes have. Since I ran out of my usual Siligum mold putty, I decided to try this new to me silicone-based putty called Amazing Mold Putty. And I don't know if I like it yet. It leaves little pieces behind on your hand when you combine the two parts together, but otherwise I think it'll be a good substitute for Siligum. After making 2 taco shell molds, I trim their edges so that I can more easily use them as tortilla stampers. Now it's time to make our first tiny tortilla. I want to give this first tortilla a taco shell shape, but I don't want it to sag while baking, so I tuck a little piece of foil in it before popping it in the oven. Now that we've got all our ingredients made, it's finally time to assemble our first taco. I start with a piece of translucent clay as the first layer. This will serve as the glue to hold all our ingredients in place while baking. Then we add our first slice of chicken in there, our lettuce, cheese, and tomatoes, and arrange it all nicely with the help of some clay glue before giving our taco its final baking. To give our tortilla a deliciously toasted finish, I use my needle tool to apply some cinnamon stick acrylic paint, mostly on the edges. I also dab some of the paint before it dries to give it a more realistic finish. Delicious. Before adding the finishing paint touches to our tiny taco, I also assemble some open-faced tacos. Is that what they should be called? I guess it's more of an open-faced quesadilla, or a Mexican pizza, or an unfolded taco? Let me know in the comments if you have a name for it. With our taco assembly complete, it's time for the finishing paint touches, starting with some dark green detailing on the lettuce, some dark red for the tomatoes, and some toasty honey brown on our chicken slice edges. After giving our taco ingredients a nice juicy satin varnish, it's time for our photo shoot. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.